My first degree was in finance and business, and I worked for quite a few years in project finance, which is like investment banking, which I must say I really enjoyed intellectually, but after a few years I just found there was a bit of a disjoint between my personal values and lifestyle and the sort of corporate finance lifestyle. So I moved away. I spent some time overseas in international development, and then I came back to Australia and studied. I wanted to do some research in development, which I did. So I've had a little bit of academic experience, and then I sort of found that Australia is not a great place to be doing international development from. It's very far away from the rest of the world, and the dynamic of the sector I didn't really enjoy, so I decided I would focus more on local community development, and so I worked in women's services for some years with some nuns called the Sisters of Charity, which was really eye-opening and enjoyable. I'm not Christian, I'm Hindu, and that was a really great environment actually to engage in, wonderful nuns. And then I moved to this role, which is a combination of international community and youth development. And in this role I found that I enjoyed, and I was quite good at the Indigenous work we did. And I hope in the future to move more and more into working with Indigenous communities and on issues that matter to our Indigenous people. My background's mostly in community development in terms of Indigenous well-being, and it's so apparent when you work in communities that you might be running an education or a youth development project, but nothing is an island unto itself. And you have children, for instance, who don't come to school, young children, because they can't hear properly. And that's a health issue, but it impacts their education. You have young people who might not come to your night school because they have substance abuse issues. And so I think it's really obvious that you can't separate health from well-being. And for me, I really enjoyed the symposium because I've enjoyed the public health focus, which is more quantitative, and the scientific research. I think when you're working in community development, you tend to be exposed more to activism and qualitative research and people who are passionate. And I really enjoyed being exposed to the kind of quantitative research. Social determinants of health is not a new topic. Many people who work in the area understand the holistic nature of health and what affects what. And I think it's individuals, I still think it's individuals who are taking policy and funding and making it work for people on the ground. I've worked with some extraordinary government employees who are able to read the needs of the communities that they work with and, shape what they're allowed to do so that it fits into the needs. But I think there are enough people on the ground in the government who really are listening. And if you find a few of them, it's possible to get lots done. I found actually my background in finance and in the corporate sector incredibly useful in my work in community development for two reasons. Firstly, there's a certain organisational discipline that the corporate sector has that I have found the community sector lacks, and that organisational discipline is valuable no matter what the vision of the organisation is. Certain structures and processes and fundamentals of how an organisation is set up to achieve its goals. And I found managing youth talent, I used to be the executive director before I had a family, and I found that discipline extremely valuable. And it's it's an area that I don't think there are enough people in the community sector who have those skills, because a lot of them are practitioners in the area that they work in. You know, there might be social workers or health experts or development experts or gender experts. But in the end, you need an organisation to implement and to sustain. So I think that discipline is something that the corporate sector does very well. And if you have a human approach to running an organisation, you can take the best of both worlds. Finance is another area I think the community sector is not very good at. Securing, understanding the importance of financial sustainability, and negotiating good terms that match the goals of the project, and not kidding yourselves when there isn't enough money. I think community organisations always undersell how much they need, and so costing becomes really important, and costing honestly and costing in a way that is real to the project. And I think that is another area that I found really valuable to bring to the work I do, so that you're not running. People expect community organisations to run on shoestrings simply because people are passionate, and I think that's not fair. It burns people out, and so to be open and to be able to articulate why, you know, you have to pay people and you need money to run projects. And just because we're a community organisation, we're not going to kill ourselves to get things done. And that sort of strong sense of negotiation and articulation of finance comes when you've negotiated with bankers and finance organisations that aren't afraid to talk money. So both those I think are really good, but they have their place. And you have to be able to, you know, combine the human mission or vision of your organisation with finance and organisation. So that's probably where it's been most useful for me.